Is there someone in your life whose presence feels like an invisible thorn lodged deep within the most sensitive part of your soul? Someone whose words, gestures, even their very breath can trigger a surge of searing, almost physical aversion? Do you ever feel as though the air around them thickens and their every phrase isn't just a sound, but a hammer blow to your frayed nerves? We often dismiss this, calling it a personal dislike, a clash of personalities, or simply, they just annoy me. But what if, beneath this superficial reaction, lies something far deeper, something that concerns not them, but you? What if the most irritating person in your life isn't merely a random passerby, but a carefully orchestrated messenger from your own long-forgotten inner abyss? Imagine this person is not just an outsider, but the embodiment of your own inner exile, a part of you that was once whole, yet was ruthlessly rejected and locked away in the dungeon of your subconscious because society, your family, or even you yourself decided that this quality was unacceptable. Perhaps it was ambition deemed vanity, or vulnerability labeled weakness, or healthy aggression branded as malice. Now, this exile, clothed in another's flesh, stands before you like a ghost from the past, demanding recognition. This is not a curse, but an invitation. Within every surge of burning irritation, every moment when someone's behavior infuriates you to the core, lies not weakness, but a profound key, a key to your true strength, to understanding those parts of yourself that were forgotten, suppressed, even dehumanized. This isn't just a negative emotion. It's a compass pointing to unexplored territories of your soul where untapped potentials and hidden wounds lie dormant. It is at this point of maximum tension, when you feel ready to explode from another's presence, that the real journey begins. This is not merely a reaction to the external. It is an echo of an internal conflict, long driven into the most secret corners of your being. And the stronger the resonance, the louder the cry of your inner exile, desperately trying to be heard, to be brought home. Have you ever wondered why the same character traits provoke only mild bewilderment in some people, while triggering fits of almost irrational hatred in others? Why do we feel indifference towards some while others become unbearable, like the living embodiment of everything we despise? This mechanism operates with frightening reliability, transforming casual encounters into profound emotional upheavals. But why does this mechanism work so flawlessly? To understand this, we need to return to the scene of the very first crime. We must delve into those moments when the seeds of this inner exile were sown, when the invisible prison walls for a part of your soul first began to be erected, when you first learned that being yourself isn't always safe. We've already touched upon the invisible thread connecting acute, sometimes irrational irritation towards another person with our own inner exile, that part of the soul that was rejected, driven into the shadows, denied the right to exist in the light of consciousness. If every strong aversion is a call, an echo from the depths, then now is the time to listen to its origins, to trace its pulsation back to its very inception. For to bring the exile home, it's essential to understand when and why it was sent into banishment. At what point in your personal history, at what turn of fate, did you first realize that those qualities, which today could be the foundation of your greatness, your authentic strength, ambition, healthy assertiveness, the right to make mistakes, even vulnerability, were branded as bad, shameful, or dangerous? Recall that first whisper of condemnation, that gaze that froze an impulse, that phrase that pierced like an arrow directly into the center of your developing personality. Perhaps it happened within the walls of your childhood home, where a genuine childlike ambition to be the best was met with a disapproving, "don't show off," or "be more modest." And so the sprout of aspiration to reach the top, instead of reaching for the sun, began to twist underground, becoming invisible or even withering entirely. Or perhaps your healthy, spontaneous assertiveness, a natural desire to defend your boundaries, was suppressed by a stern shout, "Don't you dare talk back," or "Good children don't behave like that." And then the strength meant to protect yourself and your interests turned into a clenched fist inside, a silent resentment, a fear of conflict that now projects onto anyone who dares to be assertive. Or perhaps you learned that vulnerability, that fragile fabric of true human connection, is a weakness to be hidden, because men don't cry and girls must be strong. And then your capacity for deep empathy, for openness, for accepting help was walled up behind an impenetrable mask, and any display of another's vulnerability began to cause aversion because it reminded you of your own forbidden fragility. Or perhaps the right to make mistakes, without which growth and development are inconceivable, was taken away with the first failures, when every misstep was followed not by support, but by biting criticism, mockery, disappointment, and then the fear of making a mistake. The fear of not being perfect became an invisible chain, binding any bold action. This wasn't a single act, but often a series of micro betrayals against yourself, when striving to meet expectations, to be accepted, to be loved, you step by step cut off those parts of yourself that seemed inconvenient for the world. This was an act of self-exile dictated by the instinct for survival, the desire for belonging. Each such suppressed quality did not disappear without a trace. It merely retreated into the shadows, awaiting its hour, its messenger, to reassert itself. And when this messenger appears in the form of a person whose behavior infuriates us so intensely, they are merely mirroring the moment when we ourselves turned away from ourselves. This is not just your personal story, but an echo of ancient mechanisms that govern each of us. We have already touched upon the invisible thread that connects our deep-seated irritation with the shadow aspects of the soul. But it's crucial to realize the shadow is not dead weight at the bottom of consciousness, not a static silhouette from a long extinguished candle. It is a living, pulsating energy that does not submit to confinement. It is like an exile who, deprived of a voice, continues to cry out from the depths of their dungeon, demanding reintegration into the tribe of wholeness. The universal law here is simple and inexorable. Everything that is rejected strives for reunion. Everything that is repressed yearns to break free, seeking paths to light, to recognition, to integration. Imagine an ancient fear rooted in each of us, the fear of being cast out of the tribe. In archaic times, this meant certain death. And to avoid this fate, as children, we learned to sever those parts of ourselves that society, family, and sometimes even our own inner critic declared inconvenient, dangerous, or unacceptable. Healthy aggression, which could protect boundaries, was labeled rudeness. An insatiable craving for recognition was branded as vanity. Deep vulnerability was perceived as weakness. All these qualities, once vital, were banished beyond our inner circle, sent into exile to ensure our survival in the social world. They became our inner exiles, inhabitants of the labyrinth of the unconscious. But an exile does not forget their home, and their return is not a question of if, but of when and how. The energy of these suppressed parts accumulates like an unpaid bill that will one day be presented for payment. And most often, this bill is presented through others. The one who provokes irrational rage, disgust, or inexplicable contempt in us becomes the unwitting courier of this bill. They carry within them the imprint of the energy we once rejected in ourselves. They embody that part of our soul that was imprisoned and now demands liberation. Recall the myth of the Minotaur. This monster, half human, half bull, was the result of an unnatural union born from Queen Pasiphae's secret desire and hidden deep within the Cretan labyrinth. It was a disgrace, a hidden shadow of the royal house, yet it was alive, demanding sacrifices and craving recognition of its monstrous nature. The Minotaur is an archetypal image of what we hide in our labyrinths, what seems too repulsive or dangerous to release. But it does not disappear. It awaits its Theseus, a hero who dares to descend into the darkness to face it head on. In the context of projection, this Minotaur is our own shadow part, which we see not in ourselves but in another person, perceiving them as a monster worthy only of destruction or contempt. We project our inner monster onto an external figure, trying to distance ourselves from it, not understanding that it is merely a reflection. Thus, irritation is not just a negative emotion. It is a call, a cipher, a message from our exiled parts. It points to those areas of our psyche that demand attention, integration, and perhaps healing. And sometimes, to begin this process, it is enough to simply look at those who cause us the most aversion, to understand exactly what aspect of ourselves we diligently hide from the world and from ourselves. And so when the inner exile we've discussed begins to knock on the walls of our consciousness, it often does so by using the faces of others. Look at those who trigger an irrational wave of dislike in you, a sharp irritation that seems disproportionate to their actions. These are not merely people. They are living, breathing projections, shadow messengers sent to return fragments of our soul that we once rejected and confined to the deepest corners of our psyche. What forms does this inner exile take when it appears to us through others? Often, it manifests through three archetypal figures, each bearing the imprint of our own carefully concealed shadow. Firstly, there is the usurper, the one who seems pushy, brazen, who shamelessly appropriates others' ideas, achievements, or attention. They effortlessly occupy a space you only dared to dream of, or easily express an opinion you meticulously concealed, fearing judgment. They are the embodiment of that ambition, that audacity. That right to be at the center, which you once cruelly suppressed within yourself, convincing yourself that such qualities are improper or unworthy. In their assertiveness, you see your own unrealized yearning for leadership, for recognition, for free self-expression, which was exiled for the sake of modesty or fear of failure. Your contempt for them is the cry of your own suppressed I want. Secondly, there's the chaotic, the one who lives without apparent rules, whose life seems disorderly, yet surprisingly free. They are unpunctual, unreliable, their decisions impulsive, and their path is a constant deviation from the beaten track. They provoke anger in those who have built their entire lives on strict order, discipline, and control. They are a mirror of your own spontaneity, confined within boundaries, your longing for ease of being, for freedom from endless shoulds and musts. Their irresponsibility is a challenge to your own hyper-responsibility, which you accepted as a burden but once dreamed of shedding. And finally, the dramatic, the one who seems excessively emotional, constantly sacrificing themselves, or conversely, flaunting their suffering, demanding sympathy and attention. Their tears seem manipulative to you, their despair feigned, and their need for support a sign of weakness. They are the embodiment of your own deeply hidden vulnerability, your need to be seen, heard, and loved as you are, without masks or armor. Your irritation towards them is the pain of your own unshed tears, from the prohibition against expressing true feelings, from the fear of being rejected for your weakness. Let me give you an example. I once observed a man, let's call him Mark, whose face contorted in a grimace of unbearable disgust whenever his colleague, Elena, was mentioned. Elena was, in his words, the embodiment of everything bad. She knew how to present herself. Her presentations were always vibrant, and she wasn't afraid to assert her point of view, even if it went against management's opinion. Mark called her a self-important upstart, a pushy egoist, an empty vessel who only knows how to shout. His hatred was irrational, almost physical. Meanwhile, Mark was a talented but incredibly modest and shy person who had suffered from being undervalued for years. He feared public speaking, didn't know how to sell his ideas, and believed that modesty adorns. Elena was for him a living, breathing embodiment of everything he forbade himself, everything he exiled from his inner world as unacceptable for a good person. Her success was not just a colleague's success for him, but a painful reminder of his own suppressed potential, his ambitions, trapped in a cage of fear and false beliefs. These figures are not just random passers-by on your path. They are beacons pointing to hidden treasures locked away by your inner exile. And if we dare to look deeper, we will discover that behind each of these irritating masks lies not only a shadow, but also an incredible strength that we have denied ourselves. Our journey through the labyrinths of the soul is just beginning, and each step leads us to new discoveries, to those hidden corners where not just a shadow resides, but its mirror image, a radiant yet rejected strength. We have spoken of demons, those external images that provoke such acute aversion in us, but it is time to view them not as a curse, but as harbingers of a hidden gift. For every exile, every aversion that resonates with pain within us is a distorted echo of a once powerful but now imprisoned virtue. Consider the usurper, they who so brazenly, so unceremoniously take another's place, who so defiantly strive for the top, unconcerned with the means. Who do they reflect? Are they not merely a grotesque embodiment of your own suppressed ambition, your inherent right to leadership, to recognition? In them, you see a distorted power because you have forbidden yourself to be noticed, to be first, to claim the place in the sun that is rightfully yours. You have exiled from yourself the right to boldly declare your desires, the audacity to forge ahead when others hesitate. This is your inner commander, your strategist, your will to win, which was imprisoned by the fear of being judged for excessiveness, for pride. And now, when someone else dares to be this commander, they become a mirror of your own rejected power. You have forbidden yourself to be visible, to be influential, to be the one who leads. And so the usurper is not an enemy, but a distorted messenger of your own unaccepted greatness, your ability not just to dream, but to actualize, not just to follow, but to guide. And what about the chaotic, the one who lives without rules, who disrupts order, who seems irresponsible and unpredictable? They who cause you to tremble with indignation, are they not merely a distorted reflection of your own suppressed spontaneity, your right to lightness, to freedom from total control? You have exiled from yourself the right to make mistakes, to improvise, to simply be without planning every breath. You have imprisoned within yourself the inner child who yearns for play, creativity, and unpredictable flight of thought. This exile is your capacity for adaptation, for joy, for living in the moment, for intuitive movement. When you see the chaotic, you see your own rejected ability to flow, to live without rigid frameworks, to experience the joy of being unburdened by the need to conform to others' expectations. You have forbidden yourself to be unpredictable, to be free from the shackles of perfectionism, to trust your intuition, and to live without fear of non-linearity. And finally, the dramatic, the one who so openly, so expressively displays their emotions, who craves attention, who seems to revel in their own suffering or triumph. They who cause you such strong irritation with their excessiveness, are they not merely a grotesque image of your own hidden vulnerability, your right to genuine feelings, to attention and deep connection? You have exiled from yourself the right to be weak, to be sensitive, to ask for help, to openly express your pain or joy without fear of being judged for weakness or excessive emotionality. This exile is your capacity for deep empathy, for authentic connection, for experiencing the full spectrum of human emotions. You have forbidden yourself to be fully yourself, to be seen in your authenticity, to be loved for your vulnerability. When the dramatic appears on your horizon, they carry a message about your own suppressed need for acceptance, for compassion, for the right to be heard and seen, even when you are not perfect. Thus, every demon, every source of our irritation is merely a mirror reflecting those valuable parts of ourselves that we once rejected, exiled into the dark corners of the psyche. They carry not a vice, but an encrypted message about the strength, the right, the true capacity that we have forbidden ourselves. And this prohibition, this fear of becoming like the rejected, has its deep, sometimes invisible consequences in our lives. The inner exile, once confined to the dark depths of the soul, does not simply languish silently in its chains. No, its existence, its suppressed energy, becomes an unseen puppeteer, pulling the strings of your decisions, coloring your destiny with shades of fear. It is this fear, the terror of becoming what you so vehemently condemn, that compels you to choose paths that lead not to flourishing, but to stagnation. Recall the usurper, the one who, in your opinion, unceremoniously pushes their way forward, trampling on others' boundaries. Your aversion to their assertiveness, to what you perceive as their inappropriate ambition, is often merely a reflection of your own suppressed right to leadership, to the healthy assertiveness necessary to protect your interests. Fearing to become similarly unprincipled or domineering, you forgo opportunities. You don't ask for a promotion because it might seem pushy. You don't assert your viewpoint in a meeting fearing to be too loud. You allow others to appropriate your ideas, your time, your energy, just to avoid resembling someone who, in your opinion, goes too far. And so instead of claiming your rightful place in the sun, you remain in the shadows, feeling the bitter aftertaste of unrealized potential and a quiet envy of those who dared to take what was theirs. Your unwillingness to be an usurper makes you a victim, voluntarily relinquishing control over your life. Or take the chaotic, the one who seems irresponsible, disorganized, living for today, unburdened by rules. Your contempt for this seeming slovenliness may be deeply rooted in a fear of losing control, in a dread of unpredictability that was instilled in you in childhood, and this fear becomes your jailer. You refuse spontaneous trips because everything must be planned. You avoid new hobbies that require unpredictability because it's too risky. You turn your life into a rigid schedule, devoid of lightness and improvisation, just to avoid being like that irresponsible chaotic. As a result, you live in a cage of your own predictability, missing out on the joy of unexpected discoveries, the freshness of change, and the true freedom that comes with learning to trust the flow of life. And the dramatic, the one who, in your opinion, expresses their emotions too openly, seeks attention, makes a mountain out of a molehill. Your rejection of their vulnerability, their need for sympathy, often stems from your own fear of being weak, of being rejected for your true feelings. You lock your pain, your sadness, your need for support deep inside just to avoid being pitiful or attention-seeking. You remain silent when you're hurting, withdraw when you need closeness, and put on a mask of composure even when your heart is breaking. The result? Loneliness in a crowd, emotional burnout, deep internal tension, and an inability to form truly close, trusting relationships. Your fear of being dramatic deprives you of the right to authentic feelings and genuine connection. Perhaps at this point you might object, but that person really does behave that way. They really are pushy / irresponsible, dramatic. Is that really my problem? And yes and no. We are not talking about justifying another's behavior or denying its objective reality. We are talking about your reaction. Why does that specific behavior trigger such a storm of emotions in you? Why does it pierce you so deeply, causing searing irritation, disgust, or anger? After all, different people react differently to the same behavior. The intensity of your reaction is not a judgment of the other person. It is an echo of your inner exile, desperately knocking on the doors of your subconscious. This is not a reproach, but an invitation to explore. What exactly in this person resonates with your own unhealed part? What part of yourself are you so diligently hiding that its manifestation in another causes such a tempest within you? It is at this point of contact between the external irritant and internal pain that the key to your liberation lies. And this same principle of mirroring applies not only to areas where we feel aversion or dislike. There's another side to this phenomenon, no less significant but often overlooked, where the exile concerns not darkness but light. We've spoken of demons, those dark, irritating echoes that, like thorns, pierce us when we encounter them externally. These were exiles, rejected parts of our soul, yearning to break free, knocking on our consciousness through external messengers, be it the usurper, the chaotic, or the dramatic. But there is another side of this coin, another dimension of projection, which is equally powerful, but far less obvious in its destructive force. This is not the shadow of aversion, but the shadow of admiration, the so-called golden shadow. Imagine that the brightest facets of your soul, your authentic gifts and untapped talents, were once deemed too dazzling, too audacious, too yours, to be simply yours. Perhaps as a child you were taught modesty, or you saw those who dared to shine brightly punished or rejected. And so to protect yourself, you unconsciously exiled these precious parts of yourself. They didn't disappear. No, they merely changed residence, moving from your inner world to the external, onto pedestals where others stand. You see them not in yourself, but in those you idolize, those you put on a pedestal, in an actor whose depth astounds you, in a writer whose words pierce to the bone, in a leader whose charisma attracts millions, or even in a friend whose lightness of being or ability to genuinely express emotions seems miraculous to you. This is not just admiration. It's a deep, almost mystical attraction to what you subconsciously feel is your own, but what you don't allow to fully manifest. You look at them and think, if only I could do that. They are so gifted. How do they manage it? And in this reverent admiration lies a subtle yet powerful form of self-sabotage. For by giving them your strength, your potential, you deprive yourself of the opportunity to become who you already are. You voluntarily surrender the throne of your inner kingdom, leaving it vacant while you admire another's reign. Every act of veneration for another's greatness, every unrecognized echo of your own power reflected in another, strengthens the invisible chains holding your own golden exiles in the prison of unfulfillment. You become a chronic spectator in the grand play of life, where you could be the protagonist, but you've given your best roles to others. This not only deprives you of the fullness of self-expression, but also creates an internal conflict. You strive for what you see in others, yet simultaneously suppress it within yourself, creating a deep chasm between your true aspirations and your real life. Allow me to ask you a question that can shed light on this golden cage. Think back. Who is your true idol? Not necessarily a movie star or a great thinker whose portraits hang in museums. Perhaps it's your colleague whose public speaking skills impress you deeply, or a friend whose capacity for empathy seems boundless, or even a stranger whose courage in decision-making evokes involuntary admiration. Who is that person whose qualities evoke in you not envy, but a deep, almost reverent, trembling admiration? Now look deeper into the most hidden corners of your being. Which of your own dormant talents, unrealized abilities, or suppressed aspirations have you unknowingly gifted to this person? What part of your own unrevealed power, your true inner radiance, have you projected onto them, refusing to acknowledge it within yourself? Perhaps you admire their fearlessness, yet you are afraid to take risks, preferring to remain in the shadows. Perhaps their lightness and humor seem unattainable, even though that same playful spirit yearns for freedom within you. Perhaps their capacity for deep compassion moves you to tears, yet you fear being too vulnerable or open lest you get hurt. These qualities are not their exclusive possession. They are merely a reflection of what lies dormant within you, awaiting awakening. Your golden exiles await their moment to return to the kingdom of the soul, to reclaim their rightful places on the throne of your own self, to illuminate your path with their authentic, intrinsic radiance. Acknowledging these golden projections is not merely an act of self-analysis. It is a sacred ritual of returning home to the wholeness that was lost when you convinced yourself these treasures belong to someone else. It is the first, yet crucial step to cease being merely an echo of someone else's symphony and to begin playing your own unique melody. And as you start gathering these scattered fragments of your light, you will discover that the world around you will also begin to transform, revealing new horizons and opportunities previously hidden behind the veil of another's glow awaiting your touch. The journey into the labyrinth of our own self doesn't end with merely recognizing discarded shadows. This is just the initial step, an invitation to a profound alchemy of the soul. For every inner exile, every abandoned gift that calls to us from another person's mirror is not a curse but a treasure map. This is more than just a psychological mechanism. It's a philosophy of life that urges us to reclaim our own power, scattered across others' images like scattered pearls. Imagine standing before a vast canvas depicting everyone who has ever provoked intense irritation or conversely profound admiration within you. Every stroke, every color is your own projection. And now comes the moment when you pick up the brush and begin to repaint this world, restoring its true colors that belong to you. This isn't about becoming good or convenient. It's about becoming whole. The healthy aggression that once frightened you in the usurper now becomes your ability to assert boundaries. The spontaneity of the chaotic that annoyed you transforms into your freedom to create and breathe fully. The vulnerability of the dramatic that repulsed you becomes your true strength of empathy and depth of feeling. Here is a simple yet powerful tool that will serve as your compass on this inner pilgrimage. Let's call it the mirror of inner return. Chapter 1. Choose your messenger. Recall a person who recently evoked your strongest negative reaction, irritation, anger, or deepest admiration. Let this be someone from your daily life. Chapter 2. Name the quality. What specific quality in this person affected you so strongly? Was it their assertiveness, lack of ceremony, excessive emotionality, or conversely, their ease, brilliant success, or fearlessness? Be as precise as possible. 3. Find your exile. Now ask yourself, when and where did I disown this quality within myself? When did society, family, or circumstances teach me to hide it, to consider it unacceptable or impossible for me? Perhaps you were punished for showing anger as a child, or you felt ashamed of your vibrancy. 4. Welcome the return. Imagine this quality, your inner exile, returning to you. How can you healthily and constructively integrate it into your life? If it was assertiveness, perhaps it means learning to clearly state your needs. If it was vulnerability, allowing yourself to feel without fear of judgment. If it was brilliance, allowing yourself to express your talents without fear of judgment. 5. Record and act. Write down your discoveries. Think of one small symbolic step you can take today to express this quality in a healthy way. This is more than just an exercise. It's an act of reclaiming sovereignty over your own soul. Every integrated shadow, every accepted exile is a building block in the foundation of your true, complete self. You cease to be a victim of others' projections and become the architect of your own destiny. For when your inner world is restructured, your outer reality inevitably mirrors these changes. And then you will notice how not only your attitude towards those who irritate you changes, but also your perception of the entire world around you. And this is just the beginning, for there is yet another equally fascinating dimension to this mirrored dance, one that unfolds not only on an individual level. This is a mystery that lies beyond the personal, within the collective unconscious, where shadows intertwine in shared destinies, forming the invisible threads that connect us all.